For 23 years, Chuck Robertson doubled for John Wayne in 47 movies. He took the punches. He fell off the horses. He crashed through windows. He tumbled down staircases. He did the dangerous work, the kind of work that breaks bones, ends careers, and sometimes kills. And for all those years, absolutely nobody knew his name. Nobody asked. Nobody cared. He was a shadow, a ghost in the machinery of Hollywood, a man whose entire existence was defined by his ability to disappear. Until 1976, when John Wayne did something that changed everything. Something that challenged the unwritten rules of Hollywood. Something that transformed not just Chuck's life, but the way the entire industry viewed the men and women who risked their lives to make the stars shine brighter. But to understand what happened that night, you need to understand who Chuck Robertson was and how he became the most important invisible man in Hollywood. Chuck Robertson started working as a stuntman in 1950. He was 26 years old. He wasn't a Hollywood kid, didn't have connections, didn't have a powerful agent or a famous last name. What he had was a body that knew how to take punishment and get back up. Former rodeo rider from Oklahoma, spent his teenage years getting thrown off broncos and bulls, broke his collarbone twice, fractured his wrist, dislocated his shoulder more times than he could count, but he always got back on. That was the rodeo way. You fall, you get up, you get hurt, you tape it up and ride again. Tough, fearless, good at falling, really good at falling. That's a skill, you know. Most people tense up when they fall. That's when you get hurt. Chuck had learned to relax into it, let his body go loose, roll with the impact, distribute the force. It's physics and instinct combined, and Chuck had both. When the rodeo circuit dried up for him, too many younger riders, not enough prize money, Chuck heard about stunt work in Hollywood, heard they needed guys who could ride horses and take falls, guys who didn't mind getting hurt for money. So he drove his beat-up Ford pickup from Oklahoma to Los Angeles with $200 in his pocket and a duffel bag full of clothes. He had no idea what he was doing, no idea how Hollywood worked. But he knew how to fall, and he figured that had to count for something. Chuck's first job was on a B-Western. $5 a day. He had to fall off a horse during a chase scene. The director wanted it to look violent, wanted the audience to feel it. Chuck delivered. He threw himself off that horse like he'd been shot out of a cannon, hit the ground hard, rolled, came up dusty and grinning. The director loved it, asked if he could do it again. Chuck did it 5 more times that day, each time harder, each time more convincing. By the end of the day, his ribs were bruised and his shoulder was screaming, but he had $50 in his pocket and a reputation as a guy who would do anything. Word spread fast in the stunt community. There's this new guy, rodeo rider, fearless, doesn't complain, shows up on time, does the work. Chuck started getting more calls, more jobs, westerns mostly. That's what Hollywood was making in the early 50s. Cowboys and Indians, gunfights and horse chases. Chuck did them all. He fell off cliffs, got dragged by horses, crashed through saloon windows, took punches, threw punches, got set on fire once. That was terrifying, but he did it. Wore a fire-retardant suit under his costume and let them light him up. Ran 20 feet while burning, then dove into a water tank. Got $200 for that one. Best money he ever made. By 1953, Chuck was making a decent living. Not rich, but steady. He had a small apartment in Hollywood. Nothing fancy. 1 bedroom, shared bathroom down the hall, but it was his. He'd come a long way from sleeping in his truck. Then he got the call that changed everything. His agent, a guy named Marty, who worked out of a tiny office above a deli, called him on a Tuesday afternoon. Said there was a job, big movie, Republic Pictures. They needed a stunt double for John Wayne. Chuck almost laughed. John Wayne, the biggest star in Hollywood, the Duke. Chuck had seen his movies. Everyone had. Wayne was an icon, a legend. And they wanted Chuck to double for him? They need someone with your build, Marty said. Same height, same shoulders, and you can ride. Wayne does his own riding mostly, but there's some dangerous stuff in this one. Falls, fights. They need someone who looks like him from a distance. The movie was called Hondo, Western. Wayne played a cavalry scout in Apache territory, Lots of action, lots of riding, lots of opportunities to get hurt. Chuck took the job. It was supposed to be a one-time thing. A few weeks of work, good money, then move on to the next job. That's how stunt work worked. You went where the work was. The first time Chuck met John Wayne was on the set of Hondo. Wayne was in costume, cavalry uniform, hat pulled low. He looked exactly like he did on screen. Larger than life, commanding. That presence that made him a star. Wayne looked Chuck up and down, nodded. "You'll do," he said. That was it. No handshake, no small talk. Just an assessment. Professional. Distant. Chuck didn't mind. He wasn't there to make friends. He was there to do a job. And he did it. Every time Wayne needed someone to take a fall, Chuck did it. Every time there was a dangerous horse stunt, Chuck did it. There was one scene where Wayne's character had to jump from a moving wagon onto a horse. Dangerous. One wrong move and you could break your neck. Chuck did it in one take. Perfect execution. Wayne watched from the sidelines. When Chuck walked back, Wayne nodded again. "Good work," he said. 2 words. But coming from John Wayne, they meant something. Chuck and Wayne had the same build. 6'4", broad shoulders. Same walk. That distinctive John Wayne swagger, hips rolling, shoulders back. Same presence. From a distance, you couldn't tell them apart. That's what made Chuck perfect for the job. When Hondo wrapped, Chuck figured that was it. Good experience. Good money. Back to the regular stunt work. But 2 months later, Marty called again. Another Wayne picture. The High and the Mighty. They wanted Chuck. Then another. Blood Alley. Then The Searchers. Then Rio Bravo. Then The Alamo. From 1953 to 1976, Chuck doubled for Wayne in 47 films. 47. That's almost 2 movies a year for 23 years. The Searchers. Rio Bravo. The Alamo. The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. McClintock. The Sons of Katie Elder. True Grit. Chisholm. Big Jake. The Cowboys. Cahill U.S. Marshal. Rooster Cogburn. The Shootist. Every iconic John Wayne moment you remember. The ones that made you gasp, the ones that made you believe Wayne was the toughest man alive. There's a good chance Chuck Robertson did it. That scene in The Searchers where Wayne's character falls down a sand dune? Chuck. The fist fight in McClintock where Wayne slides down a muddy hill? Chuck. The horse chase in True Grit where Wayne jumps his horse over a fence? Chuck. The brutal fight scene in The Cowboys where Wayne takes on multiple attackers? Chuck did most of it, but nobody knew his name. That was the job. That was the deal. Stuntmen don't get credit. They don't get interviewed. They don't walk red carpets. They don't appear in the opening credits or the closing credits. They're not in the press kits or the promotional materials. They just do the work, stay invisible, and move on to the next job. It's a strange existence. You spend your entire career pretending to be someone else. You perfect their walk, their mannerisms, their physical presence. You put your body on the line so they can stay safe, and then you disappear. The audience sees John Wayne. They don't see Chuck Robertson. That's the point. Chuck didn't mind. At least, that's what he told himself. He loved the work, loved the adrenaline, loved the challenge of pulling off a dangerous stunt perfectly, loved the camaraderie of the stunt community, the other invisible men and women who understood what it was like to risk everything for someone else's glory. And he respected Wayne, really respected him. Wayne was a professional, always prepared, always knew his lines, always treated the crew with respect. On set, Wayne always made sure Chuck was safe, always checked in before a dangerous stunt. "You good with this?" he'd ask. Chuck would nod. Wayne would say, "Okay, be careful." And after the stunt, Wayne would always find Chuck, always said thank you, always made sure he was okay. But that was it. Professional, respectful, but distant. They weren't friends, didn't socialize, didn't have dinner together, didn't talk about their lives. Wayne was the star, Chuck was the stuntman. That was the hierarchy. That was Hollywood. Chuck figured that's how it would always be. He'd do the stunts. Wayne would get the credit. The audience would believe John Wayne was invincible, and Chuck would go home with bruises and a paycheck. That's Hollywood. That's the deal. That's the way it's always been. But in 1976, something changed. It was the premiere of The Shootist, John Wayne's last film. Nobody knew it would be his last at the time, but there was something elegiac about it. Wayne played an aging gunfighter dying of cancer. It was art imitating life. Wayne himself was battling cancer, though he kept working. Chuck had doubled for Wayne in some of the most dangerous scenes in The Shootist, falls, fights, bar brawls, the kind of work that breaks bones if you do it wrong, the kind of work that requires perfect timing, perfect execution, perfect trust in your own abilities. Chuck did it all perfectly. 23 years of experience, 23 years of making John Wayne look like the toughest man alive. The premiere was scheduled for July at Grauman's Chinese Theater in Hollywood. The iconic theater with the handprints and footprints of movie stars in the concrete forecourt. Big event. Press everywhere. Celebrities. Fans lined up behind velvet ropes. Flashbulbs popping. Reporters shouting questions. Chuck wasn't invited. Stuntmen never were. That wasn't their world. Their world was the set, the rehearsals, the dangerous moments when the cameras rolled, the premieres, the parties, the glamour that belonged to the stars. Chuck was fine with that. He'd made his peace with it years ago. On the night of the premiere, he was at home in his small house in the valley, had a beer, made himself dinner, turned on the TV to watch the news. Just another Tuesday night. Then his phone rang. Chuck almost didn't answer. Figured it was a wrong number or a telemarketer. But something made him pick up. "Mr. Robertson?" A woman's voice. Professional. Polite. "Yeah, this is Chuck. This is Patricia, Mr. Wayne's assistant. Mr. Wayne would like you to attend the premiere tonight. He's sending a car for you." Chuck thought it was a joke. Had to be. Some buddy from the stunt community messing with him. "Very funny," he said. "I'm serious, Mr. Robertson. The car will be there in 30 minutes. Mr. Wayne insists." She hung up. Chuck stood there holding the phone, completely confused. This didn't make sense. Stuntmen don't go to premieres. That's not how it works. There must be some mistake. But 30 minutes later, a black limousine pulled up to his house. An actual limousine, long and sleek and completely out of place in his working-class neighborhood. The driver got out, walked to Chuck's door, and knocked. "Mr. Robertson, I'm here to take you to the premiere." Chuck looked down at himself. Jeans, t-shirt, work boots. "I'm not dressed for this. Mr. Wayne said to bring you as you are, but if you'd like to change, I can wait." Chuck went inside, put on his only suit. Dark blue. Bought it for his brother's wedding 5 years ago. Hadn't worn it since. Put on a tie. Polished his boots as best he could. Looked at himself in the mirror. He looked like a stuntman in a suit, but it would have to do. The limousine pulled up to Grauman's Chinese Theater. Chuck could see the crowds, the lights, the cameras, the chaos of a Hollywood premiere. His instinct was to stay in the car. This wasn't his world. He didn't belong here. But the driver opened the door. "Mr. Wayne is expecting you, sir." Chuck got out, immediately felt out of place. Everyone was dressed to the nines. Tuxedos, evening gowns, jewelry that probably cost more than Chuck made in a year. And here he was in his 5-year-old suit, looking like exactly what he was. A working man who didn't belong. He tried to stay in the back, blend in, find a corner where he could watch without being seen. That's what he was good at, being invisible. But Wayne saw him. Across the crowded lobby, through all the people and the chaos, John Wayne spotted Chuck Robertson, and he walked over. The crowd parted for him. They always did. Wayne had that presence, that gravity. When he moved, people noticed. Wayne walked right up to Chuck, extended his hand. Chuck shook it. Wayne's grip was firm, strong, the grip of a man who'd spent his life doing physical work, even if most people didn't know it. "Glad you could make it, Chuck," Wayne said. "Thanks for inviting me, Mr. Wayne. I wasn't expecting—" "Come with me," Wayne said. And then he did something Chuck never expected. He put his hand on Chuck's shoulder and guided him toward the press line. The cameras, the reporters, the spotlight. The cameras were everywhere. Flashbulbs popping like fireworks. Reporters shouting questions. "Mr. Wayne! Over here! Mr. Wayne!" Wayne stopped in front of the cameras, and he kept his hand on Chuck's shoulder. "I want to introduce you to someone," Wayne said to the press. His voice carried, deep, authoritative. The voice that had commanded attention in 100 films. This is Chuck Robertson. He's the reason I look good in my movies. The cameras turned to Chuck. He felt exposed, vulnerable. This wasn't his place. He was supposed to be invisible, but Wayne kept talking. Every time you see me jump off a horse or throw a punch or take a fall, that's Chuck. He's been doubling for me for 23 years, 47 films. He's taken the hits, done the dangerous work, made me look like a hero, and nobody knows his name. That's not right. Wayne looked directly at the cameras. Chuck Robertson is the real hero. I just show up and say the lines. The reporters started shouting questions. Mr. Robertson, how long have you been a stuntman? What's the most dangerous stunt you've ever done? What's it like working with John Wayne? Chuck didn't know what to say. He'd never been interviewed, never had a microphone shoved in his face, never had cameras pointed at him. For 23 years, his job was to be invisible. And now, suddenly, he was visible. And it was terrifying. But Wayne stayed next to him, kept his hand on Chuck's shoulder, gave him confidence just by being there. So Chuck answered the questions, told them about the work, about the stunts, about what it's like to spend your career making someone else look good. For the first time in 23 years, Chuck Robertson was visible. And it was because John Wayne decided to share the spotlight. After the premiere, after the movie, after the applause, Wayne pulled Chuck aside, away from the crowds, away from the cameras, just the two of them in a quiet corner of the theater. Wayne reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope, handed it to Chuck. "What's this?" Chuck asked. "Open it." Chuck opened the envelope. Inside was a check, a big one, more money than Chuck made in 6 months of stunt work. He looked up at Wayne, confused. "You've made me look like a hero for 23 years, Wayne said. "It's time people knew the truth, and it's time you got paid what you're worth." Chuck didn't know what to say. The money was generous, more than generous. But it wasn't really about the money. It was about the recognition, the acknowledgement, the fact that John Wayne, the biggest star in Hollywood, had taken the time to make sure people knew Chuck's name. "I don't know what to say, Mr. Wayne." "Don't say anything. You earned it. Every penny." Wayne paused. "And stop calling me Mr. Wayne. It's John." They shook hands. And for the first time in 23 years, it felt like they were equals. Not star and stuntman. Just two men who respected each other's work. But it wasn't just the money. A week later, Chuck started getting calls. Lots of calls. Other actors, other directors, producers, stunt coordinators. They all wanted to hire him. But not just as a stuntman. As a stunt coordinator, someone who could design action sequences, someone who could train other stuntmen, someone whose name meant something, someone who had credibility. "We saw you at the premiere," one director said. "If you're good enough for John Wayne, you're good enough for us." Chuck's career transformed overnight. He went from being invisible to being in demand. He started coordinating stunts on major films, training younger stuntmen, passing on the knowledge he'd accumulated over 23 years of taking falls and making stars look good. He worked on Superman, The Blues Brothers, Escape from New York, big movies, important movies, and now his name was in the credits. Stunt coordinator, Chuck Robertson, right there in black and white for everyone to see. Chuck worked in Hollywood for another 20 years after that night, 20 years of coordinating stunts, training the next generation. Building a reputation not as John Wayne's double, but as Chuck Robertson, one of the best stunt coordinators in the business. He trained dozens of stuntmen, taught them how to fall, how to fight, how to stay safe while doing dangerous work, how to make the stars look good. But he also taught them something else. He taught them that their work mattered, that they deserved recognition, that being invisible didn't mean being worthless. He finally got the recognition he deserved. Awards from the stunt community, respect from directors and actors, a legacy that went beyond being John Wayne's shadow, and it all started because John Wayne decided to share the spotlight, because Wayne understood something that a lot of stars don't, that nobody succeeds alone, that behind every hero is a team of people doing the hard work, and those people deserve to be seen. When Wayne died in 1979, Chuck went to the funeral. It was a private ceremony. Family and close friends only. Chuck wasn't sure if he should go. He and Wayne had worked together for 23 years, but they'd never been close. Not really. But Wayne's family had sent him an invitation, a personal invitation, asking him to be there. So Chuck went. He stood with Wayne's family, not in the back, not hiding, not invisible, but as someone who mattered, someone Wayne had made sure the world saw. During the service, one of Wayne's sons spoke. He talked about his father's career, his films, his legacy, and then he said something that made Chuck's throat tighten. My father believed that the people who do the hard work deserve to be seen. He believed in giving credit where credit is due, and he made sure that the people who helped him succeed got the recognition they deserved. That's the kind of man he was? Chuck thought about that night at the premiere, the way Wayne had put his hand on his shoulder, the way he'd told the world Chuck's name, the way he'd refused to take credit for work he didn't do alone. That was heroism. Not the stunts, not the movies, but the recognition, the respect, the refusal to let good people stay invisible. I doubled for John Wayne in 47 movies. I took the falls. I did the dangerous work. I broke bones and risked my life and made one of the biggest stars in Hollywood look invincible. And for 23 years I was invisible. But John Wayne saw me, and he made sure the world did too. Not because he had to. He didn't owe me anything. I was doing my job, getting paid. That was the deal. But Wayne believed that the people who do the hard work deserve to be seen. He believed that nobody succeeds alone. And he believed that taking credit for work you didn't do alone isn't heroism. It's theft. So he shared the spotlight. He told the world my name. He made sure I got the recognition I deserved. And he changed my life. That's the real heroism. Not the stunts, not the movies, but the recognition, the respect, the willingness to say, I didn't do this alone. These people made me look good, and they deserve credit. This was a quiet witness. If this story moved you, share it with someone who does the invisible work, the people who make others look good, the assistants, the coordinators, the support staff, the people behind the scenes who never get credit but without whom nothing would happen. Because sometimes, the greatest thing you can do is make sure the world sees the people it's been ignoring. I'll see you in the next story.